it is safe to say interest has peaked with Persona 5, the Phantom X. If I'm being honest, the more I see of the gameplay, the more I really want this game to be good. But as I mentioned in my previous video, the gacha system will definitely make or break this game for a lot of people, including myself. To help really get it off the ground, developers seem to have added some very nice incentives for people who play the game on launch. These include free 5-star characters and over 250 plus pulls at the end of the first week. So if you're like me and hate spending money on what is essentially gambling, you will want to try and maximize what you can get for free. And in today's video, I'll be going through an overview of all the characters available at launch and who you should pull for in Persona 5 The Phantom X. So to be completely transparent, in order to cover the game, I probably will need to spend a bit of money to see how good or bad the gacha system is. I will try and go through as much of the game as a free-to-play player, but I would assume I will inevitably hit a roadblock. I will always disclose if I have spent any money so you'll know exactly what you're in for. I will be covering more Persona 5 The Phantom X, so definitely leave a like, comment, and subscribe to stay tuned. Alrighty, so in my last video, a user by the name of Wandering_Thomas has commented about what the devs are implementing with the gacha system to celebrate the launch. So devs have confirmed the following: 60 pulls on day 1, approximately 250 plus pulls at the end of the first week. You will get a free 5-star character, and the options will be Mona, Skull, or Ann. There will be a Novice banner where you can choose the 5-star character you want after 50 pulls, and will include all 5-star characters available at launch. However, this does not include Joker though, which is very sad. Besides Wanda, which is the MC, obviously, 4 characters will be given for free, and that is basically due to the story of the game. This means with all these incentives, at least in the early game, it will be very free to play, player friendly. So I'm going to break this video down into an overview of the characters first, and then who you should choose from the free 5-star banner, and then who to pull once we go through all the information about the units. Now keep in mind, this is all based on information from the closed betas. I do realize that the Chinese server is up and running, and there have been a few changes that I'm not fully aware of as of yet, but this is based on the closed beta and the movesets, which I assume are sort of similar, but everything is subject to change for the final release. I'll do an updated video if anything does change, or if there are any surprises, so definitely subscribe to stay tuned. Okay, starting with the new Phantom Thieves, exclusive to Persona 5 The Phantom X. So first up, we have Bui and her persona Absuades. So on screen now is a graphic of her base stats, skills, and passives. Bui is a 5-star electric buffer unit who can do an array of electric skills that have a chance to shock, and has a singular buffing skill which gives her allies a rare seed, as it is termed. Keep in mind, it is not yet known if we can learn more skills or even upgrade the existing skills as of yet. Her skills synergize well with her passives, which both proc shock and the rare seed, so it is important to build her in a way to maximize these effects. And the one thing that I do realize about P5X is you can actually build out teams that fully utilize electric damage, fully utilize fire damage, for example. So if you're just going for a team that can utilize shock in a way that, you know, you can use Bui, for example, and then just a couple other units that have shocking abilities, or if the MC has a persona that you can switch to that has electric abilities, it's really, really potent and really powerful. So her skills consists of the following: Crackling Surprise Box, which is just AoE damage, which costs 18 SP, deal 38.4% electric damage to all enemies with a 19.2% chance of causing the enemies to be shocked. Effect lasts for 2 turns, the base chance of causing the enemy to be shocked by the skill is increased by 27.7%. So yeah, basically standard AoE electric attack, which has a chance to shock. Next skill is Exploding Bricks, single target damage, 20 SP. Deal 60.8% of electric damage to an enemy, and the critical hit rate of the skill is increased by 40%. Bui's follow-up attack has a 60% base chance of shocking the enemy. If this skill causes critical damage, Bui will gain another follow-up attack. So basically, again, just a single target damaging skill, which can be buffed by her skill set and her moveset a lot. And essentially, if you actually do get a knockdown with a follow-up attack, or if you do a 1 more and switch to her, then you have an increased chance of shocking the enemy. And then if you actually land a crit, then you get another turn, so you can pretty much have 3 turns in the one go. So her buffing ability is called Super Rare Reward. It's a single target buff, costs 24 SP. Give an ally the Rare Seed status effect. This increases the critical hit rate and attack of an ally by 9.9%. And obtain an additional increase based on 18.7% of Bui's critical hit rate. Effect lasts for 1 turn. This will also increase Bri's skill multiplier for 2 follow-up attacks by 39.2%, which lasts for 2 turns. So yeah, so this is what I was talking about before with the rare seeds. So this is essentially the sort of, I guess, the buffing mechanic of Bri's kit, which we'll get into when we talk about her passives. And lastly, her fighting techniques in this game, which are basically broken up into the 1 more attack, which is when you get a knockdown and you can choose a unit to do a 1 more, or the highlight, which is basically just like a showtime, where you need essential unlocks, sort of like a Theurgy or an ultimate finisher, I guess. So her fighting techniques are, her 1 more inflicts electric damage to 1 enemy, and as stated before, the crackling surprise box as well as exploding bricks, these essentially just increase the damage by up to 60%. And her highlight increases the attack power of all allies by 34% and critical hit rate by 17%. And this effect lasts for 2 turns. Now there's a lot of numbers rolling around, and basically I'm just reading off the cue cards essentially. But essentially from what I gather is that what you want to do is you want to buff your allies with the rare seed buff, which we'll talk about now. So her passives are agility, increases the chance of landing a critical hit to enemies that are shocked by 9%. So that synergizes well with her kit. Basically, her kit is basically just designed for shocking people. So her crackling surprise box as well as the exploding bricks have base chances of inflicting shock, and that base chance goes up when you do a once more with her. If that happens, then she gets a crit, and then that crit synergizes with exploding bricks really well, because if you get a 1 more crit, then you can actually do another turn as well. And her other passive is shining. So when an ally is holding a rare seed, mentioned before, and deals damage to an enemy that is 50% or lower, their attack power gets increased to 20%. So you can think of it sort of like an execute. So if you're dealing with really high sort of, or really annoying enemies, I guess, then you can think of the shining passive along with the super rare reward single buff as sort of an execute style buff. So just Bri's kit alone, and this goes for all the other characters, it's very complex, more complex than base Persona games, I guess. And I guess you just have to do all this number stuff with a bunch of shocking and passives that, you know, synergize well together. And you can definitely see like what you can do with your team's builds in terms of items and all that sort of stuff, which we're not too sure about yet, but I assume, you know, your items will be able to do your additional damaging or synergize well with your skills. And I'm pretty sure you can upgrade your skills in this game. I don't think it's confirmed just yet, but you know, we'll get to it when the game finally releases. But yeah, you can imagine if you upgrade the skills and you know how that, I guess, plays into the playstyle of the different characters, such as Bui. Alrighty, so Rin is up next. Rin and her persona Mengpo. Now, ever since seeing the first gameplay of P5X, I have always loved Rin's design. I think she is my favorite so far of the new Phantom Thieves, to be honest. Yeah, her design is just awesome. So Rin is a 5-star curse debuffer unit whose curse skills all scale with Rin's speed stat. So her skills consist of Ferryman, which is an AoE damage debuff as well, which costs 20 SP, deal 40% curse damage to all enemies. For every 10 points of speed that Rin has, the target enemy's defense power will be reduced by 0.6%, with an upper limit of 12.6%. So that's basically just the max that you can reduce it by. Effect lasts for 2 turns. Each time this skill hits an enemy, Rin will gain 4 points of memory, which is like a internal buff that she gets. Her next skill is the other side, and is a single target dark damaging ability, 22 SP, deals 64% curse damage to one enemy. If the enemy has any debuffs, the damage caused by this skill will be increased by 20%. An additional effect of Potang will be added, which has 100% basic probability of the target falling into oblivion, and this effect lasts for 2 turns. So again, memory oblivion, we're not entirely sure what that exactly is. You know, I can probably give you some pointers when we go down to the passives. And the other side actually synergizes well with her AoE skill, which actually decreases the enemy stats when you actually do hit them with dark damage. So every 10 points of speed, you reduce the enemy's defense power by 0.6%, and that is counted as a debuff. And then the other side, as you see, if you have a debuff on an enemy, then they basically have 100% basic probability chance to fall into oblivion, and the skill damage will be increased by 20%. Already synergies, you can see that. Next skill is Stubborn Lion, which is another AoE damaging ability, 24 SP. Deal 52.8% curse damage to all enemies and give all the enemies the Higen mana of the other side for every 10 points of speed you have. The damage received by enemy increases by 1.5%. Damage max of 28.8% of max damage. Effect is cleared after taking 2 damage instances or 2 turns. Moko soup, additional effect. The damage increasing effect of Hingambana flower is 2 times. Basically, with Rin, her kit is basically designed around giving the enemies debuffs and giving yourself these mini buffs like memory, for example. And the way they play into each other is you can clearly see that if any enemy gets debuffed, then her other side skill will get increased by 20%. So you can see you know, I know I've said this word a lot, but you can definitely see the synergies within her kit. And this doesn't include her synergizing with Joker, who was also a damage dealing, like a dark damage dealing character. So her throwing techniques are one more, inflicts curse damage to one enemy. So I believe when it says inflicts curse damage, I believe it's just a single target one, which basically means the other side, which essentially means that she gets all the abilities of the other side skill. And her highlight deals curse damage of 96% to all enemies and increases the next damage received by all enemies by 44.8%, which is huge. There is 30% base chance of causing all enemies to fall into oblivion, and the effect lasts for 2 turns. So with her passives is playfulness, increase the chance when using a skill if you hold Moko soup, which is the additional buff you get from Stubborn Lion. You will gain 4 points of memory after the skill is released. And her next passive is Full Bloom. If the enemy holding Hingambana debuff and has a health value higher than 70%, the damage it receives will be increased by an additional 11%. So again, her passives just reinforce the synergistic effects of her skills. And basically, you just, as soon as you hit an enemy with the skill, you basically debuff them. And as soon as you debuff them, they just take a crap ton of damage. You get this Moko soup ability, which gives you memory, and we're not really too sure what memory does. But you can bet your ass that it's gonna be pretty sweet. All right, Riddle. Riddle's up is next. Riddle and her persona Deira are pretty cool. Riddle's design is very cute, as she reminds me of a spelunking, I guess, little girl, especially with her big goggles. Riddle is a 5-star psychic debuffer unit of the group with an array of status debuff effects and an inherent debuff skill in Exuberant Child, which I'll be going through. Now there will be a lot of terms thrown in here, so just bear with me, similar to Rin's, Memory, Hingambana, Moko soup. But we're not really too sure what they actually are, but you know, I guess we'll find out pretty quickly in the final release when I can Google Translate it. So her skills are Clumsy's Helper, single damage debuff as well, 20 SP, deals 89.6% of attack power, telekinetic damage attack power to one enemy, causes the self-tagged enemy to randomly gain one of 4 different effects. And this is where it gets really complicated for Riddle. So it lasts for 2 turns. So the 1 of 4 effects could be Factory, Puffy Screws, Dada Wrench, Tipsy Scissors, or Weird Candy. Each effect does something like really different. Again, which is why it could be potentially confusing. Clever Explorer is her next skill, single target damage debuff, 22 SP. Deals 89.6% of attack power to one enemy, which is similar to Clumsy's Helper, and reduces the self-tagged enemy's defense by 8.9% plus an additional 0.7% for every 10% of the effect hits, up to a maximum of 12.1%. By doing so, the effect lasts for 2 turns. I don't really sure, like that's probably just a weird translation, but I'm not 100% sure what that sentence actually means, but it probably just stacks based on a different stat or a different effect, essentially. But you can just think of it as just a defense down debuff. Her Exuberant Child, as I mentioned before, is a single target debuff, which costs 24 SP. Reduces one enemy's effect by 3.2% and an additional 0.2% per 10% of effect hits, up to 4.8% by this means, which again is a bit of a weird translation. I essentially think it just scales with some sort of unique ability. It also makes the effect of Treasure Hunting Command, which we'll be talking about, and Treasury Discovery for 3 turns. When used on an enemy that does not have Treasure Hunting Command on it, there is a 100% fixed chance that will add an additional layer of trace, which got no idea, guys. So her fighting techniques with her highlight inflicts 160% of attack telekinetic damage to one enemy, so 160% is a lot. Reduces their defense by 16.9% plus an additional effect, and this lasts for 3 turns. And then her one more, I assume, is probably the same, where you just do psychic damage to an enemy, and it probably gains the debuffing abilities of Clumsy's Helper and or Clever Explorer. So there's a lot of terms, again, and with her passives, Doubt Tracking, if you have the Treasure Hunt or Treasure Found command, the damage you take is increased by 0% for each effect. Enemies with treasure quest command or treasure find, which I think, again, it's a bit of a weird translation, but I think it basically just means that you take 0% damage if you have these buffs on you, but it's not quite clear how you actually get the treasure hunt found buffs. So we'll just have to wait and see. And then exploring, each level or trace reduces an enemy's effect resistance by an additional 2%, and trace can be found on Exuberant Child. So you basically just debuff them, you get these trace effect. As soon as the enemy gets more trace effects, it essentially just reduces the effective resistance of the enemy by 2%. So, you know, you just debuff, and it basically just scales with the amount of debuffs the enemy has. So you can see that if you have like 2 debuffers in your team, like you can just go to town probably. So, but yeah, that's a wait to be seen. Alrighty, so we got the mascot up next, which is the new mascot of the game, Cattle, and his persona called Robert Roy. Now, Cattle is a 4-star unit, but I assume he gets given to you in your party as part of the story. There may be a possible like better versions of the story characters locked behind gacha, but just not too sure at the moment. Anyways, his skill set and passives are similar to regular Persona games, without many of the fancy effects, especially from like Riddle, for example. So it's definitely, you know, a welcome change, I guess, if you just sort of want to get into like normal turn-based combat. But he's essentially a fire damage healer. So his skills are Jumping Fire Owl, single target damage, 22 SP, deals 74.2% fire damage to one enemy, with a 75% base chance to inflict burn for 2 turns. Hope Beam, which is a single target heal, 26 SP, heals one party member for 76.8% of attack, plus 114 HP base. If the target has less than 50% HP, the healing is increased by 12%. The AoE heal, Angel's Mercy, heals all party members for 40.6% attack, plus 76 HP, and increases the healing on the main target by 16%. So you can still target an enemy, but it'll just heal everyone. But the person that you target does get an additional effect. And his fighting techniques involve one more, inflicts fire damage to one enemy, as well as Highlight, heals all party members for 62.1% attack and a base of 116 HP, and increases their attack by 40%. So it's essentially just like pretty much just like a Meteorama plus like a Motaro Kajo in one. So his passives are Bright. When using a skill against an enemy, a random party member will get the Starfire effect. And the other passive is Hope. Max HP is converting into healing bonus. A max conversion of 3000 max HP can be converted into 40% healing bonus. So basically, you just want to top himself up as much as possible in order to get the healing bonus for your teammates. And we're not too sure what the Starfire effect is, but it's probably just another buff. All right, up next we have Yuki. So Yuki and her persona Styx are the light damage users of the team that can also buff the party with shields and HP. Styx honestly has such a cool design. I love that Yuki's weapon is a mace as well. It just looks really cool. Yuki is a 4-star character and uses her abilities in combination with her passives to essentially become a damage dealing machine while also providing additional HP to her allies. So I will elaborate further with her skills. Judgment of the Righteous, which is an awesome skill name by the way. AoE damage 19 SP, deal 57.7% defense, bless damage to all enemies, gives Yuki and the party member with the Oath 1 blessing. So Oath is just another status effect for your party members. The next skill is Order of Righteousness, which is a single target buff, 20 SP. Give a 393% defense plus 75 HP base HP shield, and a 16.2% defense increase to one party member for 2 turns. This is a huge buff as well, guys. This is massive. They will also gain 1 blessing, and both them and Yuki will gain Oath for 2 turns. So yeah, this buff is really, really good. Just purely based on the HP shield, as well as the defense, as well as being able to get 1 blessing. So next skill is Absolute Judgment. Single target damage 25 SP. Deals 76.8% defense, bless damage to 1 enemy. And when I say defense as well, I forgot to elaborate. When I say defense, when I say like attack speed and all that sort of stuff, it's basically 76.8% of the defense value of the unit. So I assume with the stats in the game, just like in any other Persona game or JRPG, you can increase the stats. And if you increase the stats, you'll inevitably increase the percentage chance damage. So for every blessing Yuki has, she gains a charge. If a party member has the Oath state, Yuki gains another charge. If the skill is used with 5 or more charges, all charges are consumed, then each charge increases the damage of the skill by 5.1% and also gives a 3.8% HP shield to all allies, guys. So you're basically just doing buffs and using Judgment of the Righteous to give yourself a bunch of Oath and a bunch of blessings. And then once you have maxed out 5 blessings, you use Absolute Judgment, bam, like seriously, you increase your damage by at least 25%. And then you also give every single person in your team a 3.8% HP shield, which is awesome. So her fighting technique, one more, inflicts blessed damage to one enemy. Her highlight deals 130% blessed damage to one enemy and increases the defense of all party members by 24% for 2 turns. So again, the highlight just essentially just maximizes the potential of the other abilities essentially. So passives are Cold-Hearted. At the end of Yuki's turn, party members with the Oath state have a 33.3% fixed chance to gain 1 blessing. And these blessings, again, you would just use them to gain charges for your Absolute Judgment. And then Revolutionary. At the end of Yuki's turn, any party member with less than 30% HP will gain a 17% defensive HP shield, and 1 blessing for 2 turns can only happen 1 time per battle. I was gonna say, like, when I was reading that, I was like, hang on a second, that seems pretty broken if basically every time that Yuki like goes, you just get a crap ton of HP, which is, yeah, pretty crazy. But yeah, guess you can use it once per turn. Alright, next up is Moko. So Moko has awakened to persona Prosimna, probably butchered that name, and they are a 4-star psychic buffer. So she relies on her skills to give buffs to her team. Her skills synergize nicely with passives to ensure you always have a damage buff up on any one of her allies. So her skills consist of Chanting Melody, which is AoE damage, 20 SP, deals 48% of her attack power telekinetic attribute damage to all enemies, and increases damage dealt to enemies in mental state by 50%. You do gain 1 green leaf. So next skill is Lullaby, which is actually a debuff, but just bear with me. Use on one enemy, causing a 32% chance of sleep, which will last for 1 turn. If skill is used, you gain a buff, which increases the base chance of sleep by 48%. So unlike in regular Persona games where you use sleep, this sleep skill actually increases the chance of sleeping on the next use of the skill. So it's a bit strange because essentially just means that you'll eventually be able to like guarantee sleep someone. So I don't know how that's going to work with bosses or stuff. At least that's how I'm interpreting it. I could be interpreting it a bit wrong, but it sounds like Lullaby is a pretty big debuff. Her next skill is a single target buff, Leaf Flute Hymn. Pick 1 companion to increase damage dealt by 50% and consume all green leaf buffs. Every additional green leaf consumed causes additional damage dealt by 0.23% for every 10% of the unit's effect hits. So maxes out for 4.5%. So 4.5% might not sound a lot, but it does scale with 10% of the unit's effect hits. But essentially, you want to use her poking ability, which is essentially like the Chanting Melody. So just use it to gain green leaves. And then once you max out your green leaves, or at least have at least 1 green leaf, you use Leaf Flute Hymn on an enemy. And yeah, you essentially just give them a damage buff. So her fighting technique is one more, inflicts telekinetic damage to one enemy, and her highlight causes all enemies to gain sleep at a 51.2% chance for 2 turns. Increases the unit's damage by 10.9% for 1 turn. Melee attacks use a melee weapon to deal a small amount of physical damage to one enemy. So her passive Fantasy increases damage dealt to enemies with mental state by 8%. And you can get into the mental state, I believe, by sleeping or just any other mental like distress, fear, those types of mental states. And then yeah, you just do damage increases to those types of status effects. And the next passive is Pursuing. When using Leaf Flute Hymn, if Moko has 3 green leaves on her, there is a 33% chance that she'll dispel 1 random debuff on her self-tag. So yeah, you just want to make sure you get Chanting Melody up to get at least 3 green leaves, and then your Leaf Flute Hymn, increases the damage buff of the enemy that you choose, of the ally you choose, sorry, and then Pursuing, basically you can just dispel a debuff to yourself. So synergistic synergies. So next up is Closer and her persona Wielder. So Closer is actually a party member that you get, and it's a 4-star electric AoE DPS unit. as it is classified. And basically with her unit, she is available during the story. And again, just like with Cattle, we're not too sure if you can get an upgraded version of her through the gacha system. So yeah, she's basically just a DPS unit, damage dealing machine. Synergizes really well with Bui, for example. It just works really well with her shocking, as well as her electric damage. So we'll just get into the skills. So Thunder Fury, which is an AoE damaging skill, 20 SP, deals 60.8% electrical damage 5 times to random enemies. Each hit increases the chance of getting the conductive state by 40%. Subsequent attack against the same enemy will only deal 50% damage. Enemies not hit before are more likely to be hit. So it's just basically just a random lot. So it's not just like a Matsuo, for example. You just basically just random 5 enemy units hit, and then subsequent damage is 50%. So you can't just like beat on one enemy, I guess. Next skill is Over Speed Electric Shock. Single target damage 18 SP. Deal 102.4% electrical damage to one enemy. If the enemy has the conductive state, they have a 50% base chance to be inflicted with shock for 2 turns. Again, this works well with Bui, which, procs a lot of stuff off shock. So Thunder Fury, just basically has a good chance of getting an enemy the conductive state, and if it procs the conductive state of Overspeed Electric Shock, then you've got 50% chance to be shocked. Electric Shark is the next ability in AoE damage, 24 SP, deal 64% electrical damage to all enemies, consume all conductive states on all enemies, and deal 12.2 times number of conductive electric damage to all enemies. So essentially, similar to Bui, it just this conductive state status debuff or status effect basically just procs all her skills, and it just does a crap ton more damage with all her skills essentially. And her fighting techniques are one more: inflict electric damage to one enemy, and highlight deal 108.8% electric damage to all enemies, has 100% fixed chance to inflict them with conductive. So yeah, you just conductive, and then you get Thunder Fury to conductive more, and then you can use Overspeed Electric Shock to shock them because of how much conductivity they have. And then, or you can just use Electric Shark to consume all the conductive states and do 64% times plus 12.2 times the number of conductive status effects on the enemy. DPS unit for sure. So it passes our power. At the start of the battle, a random enemy will be inflicted with conductive, and there is a 17% fixed chance for another enemy to be inflicted with conductive. So you can just start the battle and you can just deal a lot of damage straight away with Electric Shark. It's crazy. And guard, if enemies inflicted with shock will receive 10% more electric damage, which works really well with Bui because she basically can shock people with her, normal skill. So yeah, a good team would be Closer and Bui for sure. Yeah, just reading that off the top of my head, I just go, yeah, definitely. So the next Phantom Thief up on the board is Soy and his persona Mandarin, which is a 4-star ice defense unit. So Soy basically just provides a lot of buffing skills based on HP, and then yeah, you can just basically stay safe with him. He seems like a stalwart type of character anyway, but also deals ice damage as well as physical damage. Actually, this is one of the people who does dual damage types actually, so that's pretty interesting. At least the ones that we've said so far. Soy is also available through the story, so he is one of the Phantom Thieves that will join Wonder as well as Closer. And yeah, it'll just be sort of awaits to be seen how that interaction works. If you can get an upgraded version of Soy, 4-star unit from the gacha system, we're not too sure. Or, you can maybe even just get an upgraded version of Mandarin, who knows? So we'll just have to have a look on April 18th. So moving on to his skills, Iceberg Shake, single target damage, 20 SP, deal 59.1% max HP ice damage to one enemy with a 70% base chance to inflict freeze. Next skill is Vanguard Assault, single damage, 9% HP, deal 32% max HP physical damage to one enemy, and reduces the enemy's defense by 13.4% for 2 turns. When Soy is in the Wild Savior state, the defense reduction is increased to 26.9%. So this skill obviously procs off this Wild Savior effect state, but basically it's just a massive damage dealing, like physical damage dealing ability, and you can reduce an enemy's defense. His AoE buff is called Zero Curse, which costs 24 SP, increases the max HP of all party members by 12.5%. This increases the chance of Soy being attacked for 2 turns. So essentially, it's sort of like a taunting skill, but you do get a buff to all your party members. And his fighting technique inflicts ice damage to one enemy as the one more, and highlight deals 49.4% max HP ice damage to one enemy, increases the max HP of all party members by 7.6% for 2 turns. So his passives are Wild increases the number of bullets by 6, which is essentially his gun. Each bullet has a 3.3% fixed chance of dealing 9% max HP additional damage, and reduces the enemy's defense by 50% for 3 turns. And when I first read this, I was like, 15% of like a gun? I'm like, dude, this is crazy. Especially considering the Vanguard Assault ability skill as well. So his gun damage is reduced when hitting the same enemy multiple times, which makes sense. Because Sawyer has a Gatling gun as well, by the way. So if you didn't know that, like that's pretty crazy. And his other passive is Bravery. After using Zero Cure, every time Sawyer gets hit, there is a 10% chance to trigger the effect Wild Savior for 2 turns. Okay, well there you go, that's the Wild Savior state for you. So essentially you can just buff your team and then it procs Bravery, which then possibly procs Vanguard Assault, which then also, you know, would help proc Zero Cure with Wild as well. Yeah, okay, his kit is pretty crazy, I'm not gonna lie. So yeah, pretty cool dude. And his persona is actually really dope as well. So yeah, definitely looking forward to having him on my party. Alright, next is Mont and her persona Terpsichore. I'm definitely butchering that one for sure. But basically she is a 4-star ice DPS unit. And yeah, all she does is ice damage. She has some of the coolest animations I've seen so far in P5X. And then her mask as well is really cool. Alright, so Mont's skills are Ice Bloom, AoE damage 20 SP, deal 61.4% ice damage to all enemies with a 12.8% base chance to inflict freeze. Her next skill, Winter Tear, single target damage 20 SP, deal 110.7% ice damage to one enemy. Mont gains 4 ice crystals. Her next skill is Ice Blade, single target damage 24 SP, deal 124% ice damage to one enemy. 124%, alright. When Mont has 10 ice crystals, the less HP the enemy has, the higher damage dealt with the skill up to 19.2%. So Ice Blade is essentially an execute. And then her fire techniques are one more, inflicts ice damage, and highlight, deal 224% ice damage to one enemy. When the enemy's HP is below 20%, the damage is increased by 70%. So her highlight can essentially just execute an enemy. Actually, now that I'm reading that, that's pretty much a guaranteed execute for sure. So all these skills synergize well with her passives. So first passive, Selflessness. When Mont defeats an enemy, she gains 2 ice crystals. And Boundless. Every time an enemy is inflicted with Frozen, Mont has a 33.3% fixed chance of gaining 1 ice crystal. So yeah, essentially you just want to like defeat the really low enemies with Mont to get the ice crystals. So yeah, like this Boundless skill, you know, having a chance, or Selflessness and Boundless having a chance of gaining ice crystals, as well with Winter Tear to get 4 ice crystals, and eventually, you know, once you have 10, her Ice Blade will just essentially execute any enemy. There's no way that amount of damage, 124% ice damage, and then the less HP that she has, she does an additional 19.2% damage. Doesn't just execute, you know, normal mob enemies. Next up on the list is Fleuret, and his persona Leucothea. So Fleuret is a 4-star wind DPS unit. And yeah, we haven't actually seen any wind stuff as of yet, so that'd be pretty cool to have a look at. So his skills consist of Howl of the Wind, single target damage 16 SP, deal 28.1% wind damage 4 times to one enemy, with a 9.6 base chance to inflict winded for 2 turns. So yeah, this is 4 times damage to one enemy. That's pretty significant. Next skill is Elegant Storm, AoE damage 19 SP, deal 16.8% wind damage 3 times to all enemies, has a 32.3% chance times number of enemies for Fleuret to gain 1 inspiration. The next skill is Shadowless Pierce, which is a single target wind skill, 18 SP, deal 34.9% wind damage 3 times to one enemy. If Fleuret has less than 3 inspiration, deals 1 additional instance of damage, and the crit rate of the skill is increased by 20%. Fighting technique, one more, just deal wind damage to one enemy, and highlight, deal 38.4% wind damage 4 times to one enemy. If Fleuret has 3 or more inspiration, deals 1 additional instance of damage. So I assume these will probably proc and synergize with the passives. So first passive is Focus. When using Shadowless Pierce against an enemy inflicted with Winded, it has a 33.3% fixed chance to deal 1 additional instance of damage. And the next one is Suppress. At the end of Fleuret's turn, he has a 20% fixed chance to gain 1 inspiration. So yeah, you just basically want to use his basic skill Howl of the Wind to inflict Winded, which then procs the Focus one. So you can use Shadowless Pierce, which will do an additional instance of damage. So instead of 3 times to 1 enemy, it would be 4. And then if you don't actually use Elegant Storm, so if you're not going to use Elegant Storm to knock down enemies who are weak to wind, for example, then you don't get the additional instance of inspiration, which means you can actually get up to 5 times damage with Shadowless Pierce after proccing Focus as well as Suppress. But then if you do want to do a crap ton of damage to one enemy with the highlight ability, then you probably want to use Elegant Storm in order to get more instances of inspiration. So this one is actually a bit weird, considering that it has a negative effect if you have like more inspiration on the Shadowless Pierce, but then it has a positive effect on it if you have less. So it'd be interesting to see how that balances out and if that actually changes, because that sounds, considering that all the other ones just have net positive effects, it seems, it's a bit weird that Fleuret doesn't actually have that. So a wait to be seen, but you know. But in saying that, Fleuret's like design and haircut, like with the little, I don't know, you call it like a butler's stuff, like suit-ish with like the long tassels, jacket, and then the blue gloves. Awesome. I love his hair as well. His hair is dope. Alright, next up is Sepia and Gorgira, or Gorgira. Gojira? I don't know how to pronounce that. Basically a 4-star curse DPS unit. And this unit actually synergizes very well with Rin. So the skills are Sad Tragedy, single target damage debuff, 22 SP, deal 42.7% curse damage 3 times to 1 enemy. Sepia will gain 3 hatred, then 3 verse. Every time Sepia gains a verse, there is a 25% fixed chance for a hatred to be converted into a verse. This can be triggered up to 2 times. Every time Sepia gains a hatred or a verse, makes Sonnet of Destiny have a 30% base chance to inflict 1 curse on the enemy. That sounds a bit more complicated than it is, I think. Basically, you just get 3 different instances of 2 different effects, and then one effect has a chance to be converted to the other effect, and then if any of them get converted to one or the other, you just do more damage, essentially. At least that's how I read it. Next skill is Absurd Comedy, single target damage debuff, 20 SP, deal 23.4% curse damage 2 times to all enemies. Sepia will gain 3 heal, then 3 verse. Every time Sepia gains a verse, there is 25% fixed chance for a heal to be converted to a verse. This can be triggered up to 2 times. Every time Sepia gains a heal or a verse, makes Sonnet of Destiny heal the party member with the lowest HP by 7.5% attack. So yeah, you can basically see that Hatred does damage and Heal does heal, but it all relies on them being converted to one another with verse. Next skill is Romantic Drama, single target damage debuff, 22 SP. Deal 24.4% curse damage 4 times to one enemy. Sepia will gain 3 passion, 3 verse. Every time Sepia gains a verse, it has a 25% chance to convert passion to verse. Same with the other skills, this can be triggered up to 2 times. Every time Sepia gains a passion or a verse, Sonnet of Destiny increases the damage of all out attacks by 7%. And then the highlight is deal 63.5% curse damage 3 times to one enemy. The next 2 Sonnet of Destinies will deal 33.2% attack damage. So passives are Death Knell. Sonnet of Destiny deals 16.7% more damage when the enemy has a debuff. And Word, Sonnet of Destiny's damage is increased by 2% for each verse Sepia has. Bit of a weird and complicated character. I don't think we've seen much gameplay of Sepia. I could be wrong. So it'd be interesting to see how this kit actually plays, within the team. But it seems like every skill can basically just proc off everything, and then each skill has a different additional effect. So Sad Tragedy does more damage, Absurd Comedy heals, and Romantic Drama just basically makes Sonnet of Destiny, which I believe is the highlight skill, just deal a lot more damage. And all of this, synergizes and procs with Death Knell and Word, the passives as well. Next up, we have Leon and Etheria, which is a 4-star nuke buffer unit. I think Etheria's persona design is really cool. So this one got announced very recently, and looks, I don't know, it looks like the most gacha style character of the bunch so far. It kind of feels a bit out of place, but I do really like the effects. It's sort of like this really like interesting gamified like sci-fi sort of effect towards Leon and Etheria, and I think it's pretty cool. So his skills are Nuclear Heat Fantasy, which is a single debuff, a single target damage skill, but also debuff. 20 SP, deals 80% of attack power nuclear damage to one enemy. If any companion is under shield when this skill is released, the damage dealt by the skill is increased by 20%. Next skill is Refining Life, which is a single heal, 25 SP, displaces 35% of one companion's current HP at 80% into a shield with an additional shield equal to 54.4% of Kamiyama's attack power. So Kamiyama is Leon's like actual name. Companions under the shield gain an attack boost equal to 11.2% of Kamiyama's attack power. The shield lasts for 2 turns. End of the effect returns HP based on the amount of shield left. So it's an interesting ability. I don't know if it's just better than an outright heal. It just waits to be seen how the game sort of unfolds with the battle system. Energy Conversion is the next skill, which is a single target buff. 27 SP, which I believe is one of the highest cost buffing / debuffing skills that we've seen so far. Enhances the blast effect of one companion, 8% plus 0.4% per 100 attack points of Kamiyama, up to a maximum of 19.2% in this way. Also 2 times attack boost buff from the Justice buff on them for 2 turns. And the Justice buff will be elaborated on in the passives. And his fighting technique is one more, inflicts nuclear damage to one enemy, and highlight shields one companion with 102.4% of its attack power, and gives it an attack boost of up to 41.6% of its own attack power, based on 32% of Kamiyama's attack power for 2 turns. So his passives are Resistance. When the shield applied by the Refining Life breaks, the shield owner recovers 40% of the attack power of Kamiyama's Reach Central. And next one is Companionship. If a companion has 2 plus stacks of Justice, it will increase its bludgeon effect by an additional 6%. So I believe bludgeon is just an additional damage increase, like physical damage increase. I'm not 100% sure on that, but 2 plus stacks of Justice seems like pretty good. And yeah, those passives work really well with Refining Life, obviously, as well as Energy Conversion. So you essentially can just buff enemies, but then if they actually like get the buff dispelled, they actually gain more attack power. So seems like an interesting unit. We'll just have to wait and see what teams that you can form with him. And let me know down in the comments below what teams that you've already concocted in your head, because it seems like there's a lot of options and a lot of cool parties that you can develop. Alright, next up we have Ki and his Persona Psych, 4-star fire debuff unit. I think Psych's design is super dope. I really love how Ki is giving off, for me at least, Levi vibes with the haircut and everything. And yeah, I just really like his persona look with the mock turtleneck and the suspenders and just the long black coat. I think long black coats they're just really cool. So fire damaging persona user with skills of Explosion, Burning, single damage ability, 18 SP, deals 17.2% max HP fire damage to one enemy, with a 100% base chance to inflict burn. If the enemy is already inflicted with burn, Ki will gain 1 sacrifice, and the skill now target all enemies and do half the damage. So after using Explosion Burning, you essentially turn that into an AoE skill, because you have a 100% base chance of inflicting burn. Next skill is Candlelight Heart, AoE damaging ability, 22 SP, deal 13.2% max HP fire damage to all enemies. If an enemy is inflicted with burn, Ki gains 2 sacrifice, and the enemy gains Holy Fire for 2 turns. Holy Fire is basically at the beginning of the enemy's turn, receive 11.6% max HP fire damage, which is essentially just like an additional burn on top of a burn. Next ability is Flame Purification, single target damage, 22 SP, deal 38.4% max HP fire damage to one enemy. If the enemy has Holy Fire, the skill's damage is increased by 30%. You can just think of this guy as a DPS unit, like seriously. You guarantee the burn, and then if you use Candlelight Heart, if you get the 2 Holy Fires on the enemy, you do 30% more damage with Flame Purification. Crazy. Fighting technique, one more, inflict fire damage to one enemy. Highlight increases the fire damage taken by all enemies by 38.4%. Deal 27.2% max HP fire damage to them. It has a 100% base chance to inflict them with burn. So if you can just use your highlight, like you'll burn everyone, which then procs explosion burning, candlelight heart, as well as flame purification. So crazy stuff. His passives are gift. For every sacrifice he has, fire damage taken by enemies with holy fire is increased by 0.5%. Takes 0.5% more damage for each mitigation effect, up to a max of 8 levels. Not entirely sure what that exactly means, but it just means more damage in my eyes. And his next passive is Miracle. For every 300 max HP he has, increase his fire damage dealt by 1% up to 3000 max HP. So it looks like you can actually just go up above the HP cap of your party members, and then for certain party members they can proc off that sort of stuff. So that's pretty cool. So we're getting into the 2 navigators of the of Persona 5, the Phantom X, and the first navigator that got announced was Okyann and her persona Cleodora. So Okyann is actually an adult, and her metaverse outfit is actually based on how she perceived herself at a younger age, which is really, really cool. And to be honest, Cleodora's design with like the fur and everything, with the mask, so cool. With the buns as well, so cool. So she is a 4-star navigator unit. So I'm not entirely sure how navigators work in this game. I have seen gameplay of Okyann as well as the next navigator unit, which we'll be talking about after Okyann. And it seems like it's just like a navigator unit from any of the other Persona games where they kind of just chime in, you know, whenever you're in a pinch, or they'll give you a buff in certain situations. So that's what it kind of seems like. But when I read out the skills, you'll see that it kind of also has like stacking abilities as well as like procs of certain aspects. So I think you can manipulate your party in order to maximize the navigator's effects. So yeah, again, let me know in the comments below what you're cooking up. So her skills are Party Carnival, AoE buff, 0 SP, because I assume it's just, you know, it will just happen whenever it happens. Increases all party members' attack by 6.4%, and the effect hit by 12.8% attack for 2 turns. Okyann gains 1 beat, preparation time for actions. Okay, well there you go. So I probably should have read that before I told you all that information. So basically, it takes certain actions in order to activate these skills. So that's pretty cool instead of having it be random. The next skill is Gorgeous Swing, AoE buff. All party members gain 67 plus 36.1% attack HP shield for 2 turns. Restores 6 energy to all party members. Okyann gains 3 beats actually, and this skill takes 8 actions. Her next skill is Hot Variations, AoE buff. Increase all party members' damage by 5.1% times every 500 attack points. It also increases their damage against enemies with a debuff, which seems like a lot of these units can inflict debuffs, by 2.6% per 2.6% times every 500 attack points. And these effects last for 1 turn. And then her passives are Attribute Improvement, increases the corresponding type damage for all companions present by 15% per attribute of every party member. Vitality, once Okyann has 8 beats, the enemy with the most health will be inflicted with a random debuff. And Enthusiasm, when a party member uses a skill, Okyann has an 8% fixed chance to gain 1 beat. So she gains 1 beat from 4 actions and then 3 beats from 8 actions. So you're looking at probably just longer boss fights maybe. She could probably be useful. I'm not entirely sure how useful any of these damage numbers are exactly as of yet. And they really seem to synergize with people that can, because she can inflict debuffs, so it seems to synergize with people who can proc stuff off debuffs. And the next navigator unit is Puppet and her persona Nomates. Puppet's design is really like reminiscent and reminds me of Ann's like initial concept design. And it looks like they've kind of just gone with it, which I mean I love, because I love Ann's original concept design, which is really cool. So again, she is another 4-star navigator, and her skills are Song of Worry, AoE buff. All party members gain a 35.1% defense increase plus 65 HP shield for 2 turns, and restores 4 energy. When the shield is broken, the prep time of Calcal Thief, which for this translation has got a question mark, so I assume we're not too sure what that is reduced by 1. Preparation time 8 actions. Wow, okay. Dance of Intersection is the next skill, AoE buff. Gives a 86.5% defense increase, 162 HP shield, and reduces weakness damage by 20% to a party member for 2 turns. They also receive 2 Seaguard, which is another 8 action turn for Dance of Intersection. So it'll be interesting to see if it's randomly chosen between Song of Worry and Dance of Intersection. Yeah, we'll just have to see. Next skill is Dawn's Bubble, AoE buff. All party members gain a 35.1% defense plus 65 plus number of Seaguard on the current member times 7.1% defense. Okay, there's a lot of numbers here. HP shield for 3 turns. When the number of Seaguard on the current member is above 4, increases the member's damage by 2.6% for 3 turns. If the shield breaks or its duration is over, the damage disappears too, and this costs 12 actions. So her attribute movement improvement, is the same as Okyann. The passives tie the HP of the shields provided by Puppet are increased by 0.3% times total number of Seaguard on the field, and longing for each Seaguard on a party member increase their defense by 1.5%. So it seems like a bit of a trade-off. It seems like Okyann is probably a bit more reliable because of the less turn actions that you need to do, or less actions that you need to do. So actions is not turns as well, I assume. I assume actions just basically means as long as a party member does a turn or makes an action, that it counts as one action. So you essentially need, let's say you get 4 actions. I don't know if it includes enemy actions, but for example, it doesn't. So you need at least 2 turns to activate Song of Worry or Dance of Intersection. And if it's just like a shield, then you can probably maybe get away with it in pinch points. But it seems a bit underwhelming, to be perfectly honest. Like between the 2 navigators, it does seem a bit underwhelming. But there might be parties where you can go crazy with them. I'm sure there probably is. I'm sure a lot of people are cooking up some stuff now. But to me, it's a bit weird. But you know, at least their designs look cool. Alright, so that is a lot of information. That was only just all the new vanities as well, guys. So we'll be moving on to the existing vanities that you can go with. And then we'll move on to the free 5-star characters that you can get, which include Mona, Ann, and Ryuji. So if you're still watching this video, there'll definitely be timestamps so you can move around. Definitely leave a like and subscribe. This is going to be a hectic video to edit. But hopefully this information helps you and gets you hyped to hopefully pull out of your 260 free pulls. Hopefully you get some of these guys. So, you know. So yeah, I really appreciate all the love and support on the channel. And I'll just be covering a lot more Persona stuff. So yeah, definitely subscribe. Alrighty, let's get into the Phantom Thieves of OG. Starting off with Joker. So Joker is a 5-star unit, and everyone really loves Joker and wants Joker, and basically is just a curse damage DPS unit. Not much to say. OG, love Arsene, and his animations look bloody awesome in this game. So his skills are Fearless Suppression, deal 59.1% of curse damage to all enemies, 20% chance of getting 1 curse layer effect, and getting 1 stack of evil chi. Next skill is Ominous Omen. Deal curse damage equal to 96% to 1 enemy. When using the skill, if there is only 1 enemy on the field, 2 stacks of evil chi will be given to Joker. Next is an AoE damaging skill called Doom Chase. Deal curse damage equal to 52.5% attack to all enemies. During the extra turn, any damage caused by the skill is increased by 25%. If the target has any debuff effects, the damage caused by the skill will be increased by an additional 25%. You'll see why it's a DPS unit. And then his fighting techniques, one more highlight. So 1 more curse damage to 1 enemy. Highlight, deal curse damage equal to 134.4% of Joker's attack to all enemies, and obtains an evil chi as well. So his passives are Revenge. For each evil chi held by Joker, increases attack power by 8%. And his Devour, during the extra turn, the damage caused is increased by 33%. So it sounds to me like Joker is going to be pretty broken. And if you pair Joker up with Rin, that team is going to be hella broken. So I'm really hoping that I bloody pull Joker. I'm not gonna lie, and I'm definitely choosing Rin for my Novice banner. That's for sure. All right, next up is Fox Yusuke with his Persona Goemon, which is a 5-star Ice Defender unit. So yeah, ice and buffing skills essentially. So his skills are Cold Breaking Attack, single target damage, deal 91% of Yusuke's defense's ice damage to an enemy. There is a 75% chance of freezing the enemy. Cutting Technique, which is a single debuff, but also attack skill with ice, deal 5 times the ice damage equal to 55% of Yusuke's defense. If the enemy is frozen, an additional 20% will be dealt. If the same enemy gets hit more than once, the damage will be increased by 40% with minimum 20%. So this actually will synergize with Mont really well, actually. So yeah, that seems like a really, really powerful like attack. His next skill is mocking counterattack. Gain a shield equal to 45.7 defense plus 85 base. Effect lasts for 2 turns. Cause all enemies to gain the taunt status. Effect lasts for 1 turn. Chance of triggering Wandering Dragon spread for the next 2 attacks is increased to 100%. Damage is increased by 35%. And the attack is targeted at the groups. So it's basically just a taunting skill. And it seems like you can counter. So I assume maybe the passives are involved. His fighting technique inflicts ice damage to one enemy for the 1 more. And highlight deal 192% of Yusuke's damage as ice damage and obtains a shield equal to 73.2% of its defense. The duration of the shield is permanent. Permanent? Okay. That's pretty good. And that damage increase is pretty gnarly, especially with cutting technique. So his passives are sculpting. When using any skill, Yusuke gains a shield with 8% defense. Lasts for 1 turn. Creation. When Yusuke is under a shield, his defense is increased by a flat 16. So yeah, these just synergize really well. So flat 16 will basically proc the mocking counterattack, and the sculpting will basically just proc off any of his normal ice attacks, so cold breaking attack or cutting technique. So, you know, it seems to be like a very solid unit. Next up is the queen herself, one of my favorite characters, Makoto Nijima, queen, and her persona Joanna, which is a 5-star nuke DPS unit. And oh my god, I'm so happy that she's just purely a DPS unit, because that is so badass. And if you notice that, you know, she's my profile picture on this channel, so there you go. Alright, skills are Pulse Combo, AoE damage 17 SP, deal 72% nuclear damage to all enemies, granting Queen 2 stacks of Tenacity. Next skill is Regeneration, which is a single heal, 26 SP. Restore HP to a companion. The recovery amount equals 52% attack power plus Tenacity layer, times 3.2 attack power, and based on 25% of Queen's original defense. The companion's defense power will be increased. The effect lasts for 2 turns. So it's just a heal and a defense buff, essentially, which procs off Tenacity. And to get Tenacity, you need to use Pulse Combo. So her next skill is Nuclear Thermal Explosion. Single target damage 19 SP. Deal nuclear damage equal to 119.2% attack power plus Tenacity layer, 5.5% attack power to an enemy. For each elemental abnormality the enemy is in, the damage will be increased by 10% up to a maximum of 20%. I assume that means like a status effect like burn, shock, and stuff like that. Fighting technique, 1 more, inflicts nuclear damage to one enemy. Highlight, deal 256% nuclear damage to an enemy. And causes the enemy to obtain a random elemental abnormality effect. So her passives are Gathering Energy. When the number of layers of Tenacity reaches 10, the defense power of all allies will be increased by 7%. So it seems like 2 stacks. So it seems like you just kind of want to just spam Pulse Combo until you get that to get the defense increase. And will, at the beginning of the round, the attack power can be increased by 500 points based on Queen's defense power. And yeah, her defense power goes up with Regeneration. So that seems like pretty interesting. So it seems like the will can proc off Regeneration and Gathering Energy can proc off Pulse Combo, which both in turn will strengthen Nuclear Thermal Explosion. How fitting. Alrighty, next we have Oracle Futaba with persona Necronomicon, 5-star Navigator unit. So her skills consist of Silent Invasion, increases the damage received by an enemy for every 100 points of attack Navi that she has, the attack that she has. The damage received by Navi increases by 0.8%, max limit of 40.8%. When all companion skills deal damage to the enemy, the fixed chance of obtaining clue is increased to 100%, and this takes 4 actions. Next skill is Desperate Support, consumes all the clues held, increases the evasion rate of a companion by 16%, and restores 20 energy points for every clue consumed. The evasion rate increases by an additional 1.9% effect, lasts for 1 turn. Preparation time 8 actions. Next is Morale Boost, AoE buff. Give a companion a boost effect for every 100 points of attack power the Navi has. Its attack power will be increased by 1.1% with a maximum limit of 54.4%. Effect lasts for 2 turns. If analysis complete is on the field when this skill is released, the companion will additionally receive a damage increase of 0.4%. To a max of 22.4%, which also costs 8 actions. So it seems like her skills are very reminiscent of just P5 in general. So, you know, pretty good. Attribute improvement, which is the same, increases the 50% damage increase on specific attributes. So her passives are playfulness. After a companion uses skill that hits an enemy weakness, fixed chance of 20% that Navi will receive an additional layer of clues. And the clues seem to consume to get additional evasion rates for your party members. And the other passive is Aftermath. When the number of clue stacks is greater than 5, the attack power of all allies will be increased by an additional 5%. So you want to get those clues up, that's for sure. Alright, next up is Noir. So Haru and her persona Milady, which is such a badass persona. And she is a 5-star psychic AoE DPS unit. So we haven't had one of those ones. And she also has 2 differing skills in psychic as well as pierce damage. So her skills are telekinesis, AoE damage 26 SP, deals 73% telekinetic damage to all enemies and increases damage to enemies in a mental state by 25%. There is 60% chance of causing the enemy special treatment, which the effect lasts for 3 turns. Next skill is Searing Asylum, a single buffing skill. Gain a companion shield equaling 135 base plus 72% attack power, increases the companion's attack power and defense power by 17.8%, and increases effect hit and effect resistance by 14%. So that just seems like an out and out single target buff essentially, which is pretty good. So it's just an attack and defense buff. So I guess similar to probably like Heat Riser minus the evasion. The next skill is Precision Shooting, single damage 12% HP, deals 71.8% gun damage to an enemy and increases the critical hit rate of this skill by 20%. Just seems like a really powerful riot gun. And a fighting techniques, one more inflicts telekinetic damage to one enemy, and highlight, deal 134.4% telekinetic damage to all enemies, causing a random enemy to receive special treatment, and reload bullets immediately. Oh, that's a pretty cool effect. So yeah, that'd be interesting. So her passives are load, based on 66% of the own effect hit. The attack power bonus is obtained, and the upper limit of conversion is 71.4%. Effect hit converted into 47. Okay, I don't know what that means, but I'm pretty sure it just basically means that you used to get an attack bonus. And then Tenacity, when an enemy is knocked down, there's a fixed chance of 33.3% that the enemy will receive special treatment. So I assume special treatment is either just a status effect, or it's probably just like, you know, sort of like a dizzy or a down sort of situation. But she seems pretty straightforward. I really do like Precision Shooting. I think that's just like one of those abilities that can just do a lot of damage. And then Searing Asylum is pretty cool as well. It's like a mini Heat Riser essentially minus the evasion. So yeah, pretty cool. So next up is Crow. So everyone's favorite detective Akechi and his persona Robin Hood. Not Loki actually, funnily enough. Maybe they'll add that soon. Who knows? And basically he is a 5-star bless DPS unit. So his skills are Blessing of Prayer, AoE damage. Deal 115.5% bless damage to an enemy, causing all allies to gain 1 layer of blessing effect. His buffing skill is Mark of Redemption, gives an ally a mark buff. The effect lasts for 3 rounds and increases the damage of allies' next move. The effect of this is 19.5%. The number of layers of the companion's blessing effect 3.2%. Sorry, so that's additional. Can have 15 stacks of bless, that's a lot. The ally will gain a layer of blessing at the beginning of the next 3 turns. So 100% hit is his Almighty skill. So single target damage 22 SP. Deal 49% plus number of blessing effect layers times 6.4% Almighty damage to one enemy, ignoring the enemy's defense, which is what Almighty does. Best results at 50 stacks of blessing. So this guy can probably one-shot so many things. Jesus, that's crazy. And his fighting technique is inflicts bless damage to one enemy. Highlights, deal 108.8% plus blessing effect layer times 6.4% Almighty damage to one enemy, ignoring enemy's defenses. Best at 10 stacks. Interesting. Yeah, okay, I had to read that a couple of times, but yeah, it seems like the damage numbers is roughly the same. But highlight probably best at 10 stacks, probably because you get highlight less. It's not an innate skill that you can just keep using. So his passives are Desire. When the total number of blessing stacks on all companions exceeds 24 for the first time, the cooldown of the Mark of Redemption will be permanently reduced by 1 turn. And his other passive, Justice. At the beginning of the battle, there is a 33% fixed chance that all companions will gain 2 layers of blessing. This lasts for 2 turns. So we shall go into the 3 5-star units that you can get for free. So you can choose one of the 3 units of Mona, Ann, or Ryuji. I'll go through the skills and then I'll go through pros and cons and which ones that I believe you should choose. And then finally, we'll get to basically who you should be pulling for and what units in the Novice banner that you should be, what 5-star units in the Novice banner that you should get. So with Mona, she is a 5-star wind healer, persona of Zoro. And yeah, not much to say. He is the mascot of Persona 5. So his skills are Gale Attack, single target damage, 22 SP, deals 76.9% of wind damage to one enemy, with 100% base chance of causing the enemy to fall into a wind state. Next skill is Heal Arts, AoE Heal, restores 26.2% based on damage, plus 49 HP to all companions, and dispels one elemental debuff from all companions. If dispelled, gains a layer of intuition. Miracle Fist, so another dual sort of affinity damage dealing character, deals 84.5% of physical damage to one enemy. The skill's hit rate is reduced by 20%, and strike rate is increased by 30%. If skill bludgeons, it gains a layer of intuition. So his fighting techniques are one more, inflicts wind damage, and highlight inflicts 149.4% wind damage to one enemy, and revives one companion at 1% of their max HP. So yep, so basically Morgana does have a revive skill, however it is locked behind highlight. So that's the one thing that's a little bit strange, because so far we have not seen any revive skills. So it would be interesting to see how that actually works, if it means basically you have to use items to revive, but having the heal, well, at least the revive locked behind highlight is not ideal, considering that you can't always do highlights. So his passives are Confidence. Intuition's healing effect can be bludgeoned. This increases Intuition's recovery by an additional 15% damage plus 200 base. Don't really know what it means by can be bludgeoned, but we'll see. And his other passive is Detention, which is an aura actually, so it's an always on passive, 5% reduction in energy drain for all companions. So I believe energy again is the SP consumption. So next up is Ann, or Panther, with her persona Carmen. It's a 5-star DPS unit, and yeah, it's just, I can just see the synergies with Ann especially. So her skills are Flowering Warmth, AoE damage 20 SP, deals 50.4% fire damage to all enemies, and boosts your own damage by 20% for 2 turns. While in the subconsciousness state, reduces enemy damage by 8% based on if high roll is made or not. Boosts damage by an additional 8% if high roll, the effect lasts for 2 turns. So Fire Magic is her next skill, deals 108.8% fire damage to one enemy with a 75% base chance to put the enemy into a burn state. If the enemy's HP is less than 50% while in the submerged state, deal an additional 50% damage. Next skill is Flame Erosion, deals 56.8% fire damage to all enemies with a 50% base chance of causing them to fall into a burn state. Damage is increased by 50% in the subliminal state. And her fighting techniques are, inflict fire damage to one enemy as a 1 more, and highlight inflicts 128% of your damage as fire damage on all enemies, and increases your damage by 51.2%, which lasts for 1 turn. So her passives are Thermal Distress, damage dealt to the enemies in the burning state is increased by 10%, and Solace at the end of the dive state, restore 50% of your damage to the companion with the lowest life percentage. Essentially, what she does is she inflicts burn, and then she can self-buff herself. So she can self-buff herself with Flowering Warmth, and then when she inflicts burn with Fire Magic, you just do a lot more damage by proccing Thermal Distress. And at the same time, with these other subliminal and submerged states, as well as your dive state, she can actually heal. At least that's what it says to me on Solace. You can actually heal enemies based on the lowest life percentage. So that's, yeah, it seems like she's pretty broken, to be honest. So last but not least is Skull Ryuji, with his persona Captain Kid, 5-star physical DPS. So it's actually very surprising to me that it's not purely electric, but it's also pretty cool that he's physical as well. So his skills are Explosive Impact, deals 43.8% physical damage to one enemy 2 to 3 times. If you don't have the touchdown bounce status, drains 20% more HP to do 20% more damage. Next skill is Electric Shock Discipline, deals 80% electric damage to one enemy, deals 32% more damage if target is below half health. Power Strike, select one enemy, skip your current turn as you initiate a charge. Next turn, automatically strike selected enemy, dealing 185.6% physical damage. If you have the status effect Touchdown Bounce, guarantees a hit. If enemy dies between Skull's turns, attacks a random enemy instead. So yeah, it seems like you just do a power charge and just deal a crap ton of damage for power strikes. That's pretty cool. And then combat techniques are one more inflicts physical damage to one enemy. Highlight inflicts 265.6% physical damage to one enemy. Increases damage of a next skill by 38.4%. His passives are righteousness. When a touchdown activates, restore HP equal to 10% of your attack stat. And special attack increases attack power by 50% when attacking the enemy with more health than you. So yeah, he seems like quite the physical damage dealing machine, and it can definitely synergize very, very well. Yeah, I actually was thinking about Closer and Bui just because of the electric affinities as well. So moving on to basically who I think that you should choose for your 5-star unit. As mentioned before, you do get a 5-star unit for free between Mona, Ahn, and Ryuji. So in my opinion, I do believe that Ahn is the better one. So I'll just go through basically, why. So Mona is essentially just a wind healer. You do get pretty good heals with her skills, providing the extra healing as well by proccing the passives. You can heal, you can debuff, and you can revive. The only thing that I don't really like about Mona is basically her cleanse or her dispel is only limited to one ally. And the revive is locked behind highlight, which is very difficult to achieve compared to just having a normal skill. So basically, like, the two good things about Mona is very limiting towards in terms of like actual practicality. So that's mainly the reason why, and there's other characters as well that can heal reliably and dispel reliably. So it's a bit like, you really want to spend your free 5-star on Mona? Answer is probably not. Skull, for example, is a physical damage dealer. Basically, his main pro is that he's a reliable source of physical damage, and is a rare source of physical damage as well, because I don't believe many people can actually do it, especially because he has two or three different skills plus highlight to do a lot of damage. Yeah, he just does a crap ton of damage thanks to his passives, which basically unlock a lot of potential. But yeah, essentially, a con of that is essentially, he can take a lot of damage, especially if you don't have the status effect, touchdown bounce. And if you don't have that on, you basically just take 20% more damage. And his passes also proc more towards low HP on Ryuji. So you kind of just want to keep using his physical damage dealing abilities to stay at low HP to proc the passive in order to do more damage. So it is quite risky in that regard. But he can work very well with healers and buffers. So if you can pair him with healers and buffers, I'm sure there's a team comp somewhere where he will just basically be the main DPS unit and will just out DPS anyone if you have the right party set up. But in saying that, in terms of free unit, I'd probably prefer someone with reliable damage, and that's when I can go back to Ahn Takamaki, Panther. Yeah, in my opinion, I think she's just the best one to go for, because she is a fire damage DPS unit, and essentially you can lower like the enemy's attack. You can buff yourself, and you can, when you buff yourself, as well as inflicting burn, for example, with Ki, for example, you can just do so much damage. So yeah, she has an ability that can raise her attack by herself. She can deal extra damage thanks to her passives, and you can also lower the enemy's attack stat as well. I guess the only con is basically most of these effects only last for 1 turn, whereas a lot of the other ones last for up to 2 turns. In saying that, she can buff, she can debuff, and she can just do a lot of damage. And if you pair her with Ki, for example, and then even if you pair her with Cattle, who can also do fire damage and inflict burns, she'll just do a crap ton of damage. And then as well as her team comp, pair her with Ki, but then you don't have to necessarily pair her with a specific buffer, considering that she can buff herself, and Ki also has abilities that can do that as well. So you can flex that last position or the 2 other positions to another damage type. You can flex to like a debuffing sort of type to gain additional debuffs, or you can just flex to like a massive healer or some utility type that provides a lot of buffing and debuffing as well. So I think for your 5-star unit, I think you should definitely go for Panther. I just think she's the better all-rounder. In saying that, you can also go with Ryuji. I'm sure there's someone out there cooking up an awesome team comp for Ryuji, but I think to be safe and to just make sure that you can get through at least some of the content without having to worry about healing Ryuji all the time, definitely choose Panther. I think that would be my recommendation. So the last thing I want to talk about was the Novice banner. So basically what I recommend who you should get from the Novice banner. So it's a free 5-star unit basically at the end of 50 pulls. So who I think you should get basically between these 4 characters. So I think Bui, Futaba, Rin, or Kechi are probably the ones that you want to go for. Bui because it just synergizes really well with any sort of electric affinity types. So obviously you have Closer, which is a party member that you're guaranteed to get. So you know, Closer can just shock, and then Bui can shock, and then you know, Bui procs off shock. Same with Closer, procs off shock. So you can already have a team comp that that reliably can do all that sort of stuff. And if you pair that with Ryuji, for example, then you have like a really good team comp right off the bat. Futaba because I think just having the additional Navi is really good. Especially because her Navi abilities just seem to be very basic and they take less actions than Puppet. Because Puppet can go, 8 to 12 actions to do any sort of ability, whereas Futaba can go 4 to 8. And Okyann is not too bad, but I feel like Futaba's just base attack power and defense power buffs at 8 actions is probably more worth. Rin, especially if you're going to go with Panther for the 5-star, I definitely recommend having Rin. So I think if you choose pretty much anyone like Ryuji or Panther as your free 5-star, I think Rin just synergizes really well because of her skills. Basically every single skill that she has, it has a chance to apply a negative status effect on an enemy, and then with her passives she basically just procs all those negative status effects. And then if you get Joker, for example, if you're lucky enough to pull bloody Joker and you have Joker and Rin, I have a sneaking suspicion that you're just going to break the game because that combo is just too powerful. And then lastly, I've got Akechi. So I think Akechi is good because you have the almighty damage with him. Very rare damage type, especially with all the characters that have been announced so far. And being able to ignore like status effects or enemies' defenses basically with the ability to do almighty damage with his 100% hit ability as well as the highlight ability, I think it's just a lot. And then plus with the blessing effects as well, Mark of Redemption is just such a good buff, and having that in your party is just crazy. In saying that though, Riddle, Yusuke, and Queen will get honorable mentions. To be perfectly honest, like Haru can even work in there as well. Like I think some of Haru's skills are pretty good and pretty synergistic with most of the people. But the way I see it is my recommendations are, I think for the 5-star free banner that you get, to definitely go with Panther or Ryuji. For your Novice banner, I feel like Rin and Bui are just definitely like top S+ tier picks. And then everyone else pretty much, basically all the original Fan of Thieves, if you can pull them, be really good. If you can get Joker seems pretty broken as well. But yeah, I think any team will do pretty well in this game. So in summary, I think the characters for P5X look absolutely amazing. I do love all the designs, if I'm being completely honest. As much as you want to say anything that is, a gacha game and, it could definitely devolve into something pretty horrific. I do think all the base designs that we've seen so far look really good. I cannot wait to see everyone's builds, team setups, team comps, and let me know down in the comments below. Definitely if you have anything cooking up in your heads, it would be awesome to see. Okay, so yeah, that's a lot of bloody information. Thanks for sticking with me, guys. Again, timestamps in the description, as I mentioned before a bunch of times, and I'll mention again because it's a long video. I get it. I don't want to waste your time, so definitely just click through to see what you want to watch. But I really do appreciate if you can give this video a like, and definitely subscribe to my channel for more Persona 5 The Phantom X. Click that notification button as well to get notified whenever I upload. Thanks for watching, everyone. Really appreciate all your support, and I'll catch you guys in full release of P5X in just over 4 days. I cannot wait. So yeah, keep it locked on this channel for more Persona content, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.